Hey everybody, it's Bill Brandmeier once again here with Movement is the Medicine. This is our podcast dedicated to the power of movement in our lives, what movement means to us, the movements that we have every day, the movements forward, the vision that we cast in our lives to drive us into being a better person. Really intended to educate parents, teachers, and coaches on how important it is that our young people find something that they can do to move their bodies better. And sports is a great option. We're very big advocates in sports and play for kids. And we're here to talk about the ins and outs of movement and how movement affects us. A lot of our episodes are centered around our expert in the house, Dr. Doug Hugendijk. Dr. Doug, doctor of physical therapy and specialist in movement and how the body moves. And one of the things I love about Doug is he is uniquely wired to identify invisible vulnerabilities.
That's right. And what we do is, we identify things with the technology I'm working around that create the forces on the body that you can't see with the human eye. And we capture it all on a cell phone. And that's from the last 15 years of practicing with high performance sport and high performance culture. So it's been a lot of fun to do that.
So this is episode 21, and all the episodes have been built around relationships that Doug has had, and a couple I have here in Kansas City that we brought in, but relationships around young athletes and professional athletes that have utilized your expertise, have utilized the skill sets that you bring to the table to help them stay safe, prevent injury, but also heal in a proper way too.
Right. And we've come across each other's paths from, every way imaginable, from referrals from MDs, from high performance cultures, providing, extended care. And these stories that we've welcomed into the podcast, Bill, I think are some really interesting stories and
awesome.
Great to share with people. So,
well, episode number 21, but actually our second wrestler that we've had on.
Yes.
And I'm excited to bring our guest on. We want to welcome Samuel Beckett, a wrestler whose journey through elite athletics and academics have defined by discipline, resilience, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. And you can see in his choices, just from a 30,000 foot level, he's made some decisions to put himself into some pretty high, intense environments.
Sure.
He chose to go to Stanford, and now he's at Penn State.
Right.
Sam, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Look at that. Nittany Lions. I like it.
Hey, we are. It
was a good year. I like it. So, Sam, welcome to the show. And your story is a testament to the power of adapting and perseverance, but also maintaining a really high performance level. You're an elite athlete, and you also are academically gifted. So, just as we kind of kick the show off, talk about the life balance and how you juggle everything that you have. What's your first take of how Sam ticks?
Yeah, I think just from the time entering high school, I think I had my first year when I was a freshman. I had a difficult transition. Just really having to, you got 5 or 6 classes a day, and athletics are kind of, once you reach high school, it's an everyday thing. And I definitely had a difficult year my first year, and I can remember I was just kind of underperforming in the classroom, and on the mat, and I also used to play soccer. And at some point, you kind of just have to make a decision, and that decision for me was, these school academics and athletics, these are the two, primary important areas of my life. And it really just, you really have to buy in from a priority standpoint. And in doing so, you have to say no to a lot of other things.
Well, I have a 16-year-old, and I'm watching him. He's an athlete, but he also likes to have fun, and he's gotten into gaming, and he's influenced by his social sphere and pulled in a lot of different directions, and then health is always an issue with young people too, and so I think you're right. And so it sounds to me like you made choices pretty early on that you were going to do two things: athletics and academics.
Yeah, and it's funny
Right?
you mentioned the social sphere, just because I was at public school my first year, and I had a unique opportunity to kind of start high school again at a private prep school where I was able to get a scholarship from the first to the second year, and just that change and kind of social dynamic and just kind of the people that I was surrounded with at the prep school versus the public school, that has kind of been determining factor in the trajectory of my life, from a standpoint of just being around people who, want to be successful themselves, and people who are pushing to be, use their talents to impact wherever they are.
I mean, one of a key component of sports is to surround yourself on a team with other people, peers that not only help you develop social skills, but also push you to be a better athlete, but also, as you said, push you in the classroom. That's interesting.
Right. And where was that, Sam? That was in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, it's called the Hill School. It's in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. I would say like 45 minutes outside of Philadelphia.
And moving into that environment,
fly Eagles fly. Are we dealing with
fly Eagles fly? Yeah, it was funny. I unfortunately I couldn't make the Super Bowl parade this year, but in 2018, after they won, we were in attendance.
Oh yeah. Nick Foles won them a Super Bowl, and now they just decimated the two-time defending champion Kansas City Chiefs.
I'd like to think that they had help from a player dear to my heart, Saquon Barkley, but I mean, he was a non-factor. He kind of shut him down, but I mean, it was just
we dealt with him. We just couldn't deal with the rest of the
other team. Totally.
The defensive line. Holy cow. Anyway, that's a sore spot still. I'm still hurting. No, we won't even get into that.
But Sam, I'm curious, when you went to the Hill School, I mean, were you still a two-sport athlete? Were you focusing on soccer and still navigating soccer? Because I think that was a passion for you, right? Early, because wasn't your dad involved with it?
Let's go back. When you're a little kid.
Yeah. My dad went to Penn State, played soccer at Penn State. So I kind of grew up playing soccer, was my main sport. And the Hill School, it happened to be just a really unique opportunity from a standpoint of a wrestling alum who had been coaching Division I for 10 to 12 years, came back to coach the program. And at the time they had just a cherished soccer program from, a success standpoint. And I think they were nationally ranked every year. And just that was really the first time that I kind of moved into a high performance culture. And it was great from a standpoint of the rest of my athletics journey, just kind of seeing the way that a high level program was run, and just kind of learning a lot of important things from that. So soccer and wrestling were kind of huge for me for those first couple of years at the prep school.
I don't want to skip over this. I don't want to skip over your dad. So your dad played college soccer at Penn State. That's a pretty unique deal to have a dad playing college soccer. Did he go on to coach soccer, and has soccer been part of his life from your whole life? Like, is he still involved?
He coached a couple women's teams even before I was born, and then from the time I was a kid, he was my coach for most of youth. And then as I kind of started moving up into the higher level, he kind of stepped aside as the formal coach, but that doesn't mean he wasn't, coach after the games and stuff. So he's had a huge impact for sure.
Did you like it when he was your coach? Did he coach you? Did you play on his teams?
He coached me growing up. He coached me in soccer. He's primary his area of expertise, and he also coached me in wrestling. He wrestled when he was in high school.
Okay.
I think he was a state medalist in Pennsylvania. But he, I would say, kind of as I advanced in wrestling, it kind of surpassed his knowledge.
So, we emphasize the opportunity coaches have to impact kids. We also emphasize that parents need to be careful, on the sidelines when the coach is the coach and the kid is the kid. Did he make an effort to separate him being your dad and him coaching you? And did you get a sense that he had a philosophy?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest areas he's had to grow over the years. And to really credit to him is he's chosen to do that. I think he can look back now and see, especially me being, I have two younger brothers and a younger sister as well. But just being the oldest in our family, he definitely pushed us like really hard when we were kids. And I think there were times that he did cross that line. And it is an area he's grown in, and it's also an area that I've had to grow in myself. But because I think anytime you have a parent, has a tough time distinguishing between coach and parent, it kind of creates from an identity perspective, a focus on winning and almost a fear of losing. Right. So I think that's something I've had to learn and grow myself, and kind of learn how to compete and just love what I'm doing without having my identity in it.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's so important, right? I mean, we've talked in past episodes on parents recognizing knowledge of task versus result. Result is the win,
right?
Praising the win versus praising the effort,
right?
Especially when you're young.
And as a dad, there's so much I had to learn, to be my kid's coach,
right?
And I was the coach that wanted to win, and I wanted, I was all transactional. And then, as you sounds like you had to go through with your dad, you kind of learn that there's this opportunity to transform a person's life, because you're in their life, and they have a love for the game, and you get to coach them through that and instill within them life skills, as you play out on the field, and also respond to winning and losing, and how you work together as a team. And
right. And I'm kind of curious, Sam, you're very, well aware of how you had to navigate your evolution as an athlete. When did that first start to come into your reality? And how did you go about coaching yourself to adapt to what you were identifying there?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest teaching moments for me has just been kind of growing through adversity during my career, and just kind of seeing, if you're winning, everything's going great. A lot of times you don't have to kind of think about these areas and kind of have that perspective of what's going wrong, where do I need to improve. But kind of as I first got to Stanford, and kind of hit some adversity, it was kind of like, what is going wrong here? Like how has my childhood impacted me? How has my injury history impacted me? How has my biomechanical framework impacting me? And really just trying to piece some of these pieces of the puzzle together so I can, hopefully ultimately reach my goals. But I would just say
we're going to dig in. We're going to dig into your journey there, because I want to go a little deeper, and I want you to kind of talk more about it. But did you realize that when you were at a choice point to choose between soccer and wrestling, that soccer was a team sport and wrestling was a one-on-one, me against this guy sport? And was there a difference there? I mean, I ran cross country, and I played, basketball, and I played football, and I always realized that cross country was kind of me against the time. Wrestling is one of those sports where your weight class and the guy who is winning across the city or across the state, you're gonna meet up with him someday, and you're kind of up against the one-on-one. But with soccer, you can kind of hide a little bit. Did you notice a difference?
Yeah, that was one of the biggest points of frustration for me from a team sport perspective, was just that, a lot of the soccer teams I was on, especially as I was kind of in high school and with my club team, I would get super frustrated because the buy-in from some of the other players just wouldn't be where the buy-in was for me. And we would be losing games, and in a team sport, you're only one guy on a team. And if the team's not working together to win, a lot of times one guy isn't going to be able to have as great of an impact. And I can just remember getting super frustrated, kind of the years leading up to making that decision. And then just my love for wrestling really started to grow in high school. And just really seeing that, the work that you put in, you see it out on the mat. And, it's all on you. It's up to you if you're going to choose to get better. And, the results show you can't really hide. So I really just started to love that aspect of the sport when I ultimately made the choice to focus on wrestling.
there's so many facets to that, right? Because you have to control your weight, you have to work on your skill set, you have to work on, your mental approach to getting in there and competing as a wrestler. Right. So it's all on you. I mean, it's mano a mano, right? So, right. So
yeah, it's I love the sport. I think wrestling is something that we don't encourage our kids to do more. It's interesting that in high school you still did both. You still had participation in both sports. And when did you make the choice? What and where were you at in life?
Yeah, so I was sophomore year, at the end of this year, sophomore year, June 15th is the first time college coaches can reach out to you. And I was, as far as the soccer recruiting process, it was kind of more local than I had expected. So being like kind of in a small town in Pennsylvania, I was kind of only really recruited locally for soccer. And for wrestling, I was kind of recruited more nationally because you can watch wrestling and you know how good someone is regardless of if you get to see them play or not. So I kind of just made that choice.
How good a wrestler were you?
Honestly, so
you can
in
brag.
high school, like I wasn't that good from a standpoint of like I was never really nationally ranked. I wasn't like the top recruit. So it's been it definitely wasn't like I was the top guy, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Did you perform well at state?
Yeah, so I was national preps. I think my sophomore year I took sixth in the country, and then the following year I took third, and then my senior year I ended up going back to public school just with kind of like COVID and training, all that good stuff. And I was ineligible, unfortunately, for that last year.
Kind of modest. He's finishing sixth in the country. Third.
It wasn't highly.
Yeah, it
wasn't highly thought of.
I would beg to differ.
Did you have to? So you must have scored well on your tests for to get into Stanford. What was your academic course like? Where were you pulled? What was it? Math? Was it science? Was it English? What drove you to go to Stanford?
Yeah,
I mean,
so
obviously,
when I went to
go to Stanford,
school, I went to prep school, and I remember I got there, and I did have a substantial scholarship. The school was a really expensive school, and my parents did sacrifice to send me there, even though it wasn't all that expensive in retrospect. But I can remember getting there, and the first test I had, it was like a biology test, and I got like a 60. It was like a 67 or something like that. And I was like, I just like got that back, and like I just made the choice then and there that this isn't going to happen again. I need to develop a new system of how I'm going to approach school. Like this just isn't going to happen again. So that led me to really develop a system in terms of how I went about my schoolwork. And like by that end of that first year, I had like an A+ in every class. And then I really just continued that through kind of the rest of high school. And I was able to get like a 1,500 on my SAT. And I just knew that I knew wrestling was going to come to an end at some point. And I really just wanted to go to a school that, I was going to be able to grow as a wrestler, but was really going to be able to, set me up to reach the goals that I have for the rest of my life.
That's a great comment. And then, Sam, because we have younger listeners and parents listening, can you recall like what that strategy change was academically? Like what was the winning formula? Like what ticked there? Because, if a younger athlete's listening to this, like, oh, wow, that guy went to Stanford. Now he's at Penn State. I'm going to do what he's doing.
Right.
So like any insights on you could add, anything that you recall retrospectively?
Yeah, just being one, I was never really an active note taker in class. So I really started taking really meticulous notes, and then I found this site online. It's called Quizlet, and kind of allows you to kind of enter in all the information and kind of I guess like from what I studied and learned, the brain, like the best way the brain learns in terms of recalling information is to kind of do this thing where you're kind of constantly tasked with recalling it. So the website kind of sets up these like tests and a learning formula that you can go through. And I was able to pretty much use that. I even use it now, but kind of use that throughout my entire academic journey. And it just made, memorizing things and kind of learning what you needed to learn way, way more simple.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Love it. Quizlet.
All right. Quizlet. I mean, you might want an NIL deal with them.
No doubt.
Yeah,
They wear that on the jersey.
they're killing me because it used to be a free website and now it's like $7.99 a month, but they knew I was going to pay it.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
So, did you have a celebration of choosing Stanford? Did you get in front of the school and sign your letter of intent? Was it a big deal, or was everybody going to big time colleges and you were just
Yeah. So so that last year I had transitioned back to public school, and I
that's
wasn't
what you said.
eligible.
Yeah.
So I ended up graduating halfway through the year, and
Okay.
Stanford kind of came into the picture really late for me. I had reached out to them about going to a national tournament that I went to, and I was able to connect with the coach at that national tournament, and I had a pretty good national tournament. And they're down. It was like down to me and another guy because the coach at the time he came over from Cornell, and our recruiting class was 10 guys, and 9 of them were from his Cornell recruiting class that he pulled over. So it wasn't
Okay.
like they were out there recruiting a lot of people. The class was kind of already set.
Right.
And I ended up being the last guy that they kind of went to complete the class. So I was just super
What was your weight class?
I was recruited as a 65 pounder.
Okay. All right.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Amazing. One thing we talk about here, because you've already identified that you're a sophomore in high school and you make the decision between soccer and wrestling. And actually, that's when they say you should commit full time to being isolated into a sport.
I have nothing wrong with that.
Right. I mean, we talk about and we want to share with parents this concept of skill transference. So there's a value in kids playing a lot of different sports. And I mean, you're a classic example, soccer and wrestling. How much do you think one helped the other retrospectively, Sam? Because you look at soccer, a lot of footwork, foot coordination, scanning. Look at wrestling, you got to have fast feet, I think. So, I mean, can you speak to that? That skill transference concept?
Yeah, I think it was huge. That was one of the best things that my dad did for us. Was we were playing all sports from the time growing up. Like I played basketball, I ran track, I was in baseball for a lot of years, and just like all the skills really just kind of make you into a really well-rounded athlete. And even now, like playing dodgeball before practice and stuff like that, like there's just so many skills that I've developed over the course of my life. And like the cool thing was I didn't even know that, like, I didn't look at it the same way when I was a kid in terms of like thinking, oh, I have to go to all these things. Like he really just made it fun. And we would just go out and he really just taught us how to play in the backyard. And it would just be like me and my brothers out there kind of simulating the World Series for baseball or wrestling in the living room or just playing basketball in the driveway, just really kind of setting up an environment for us to kind of play. And I can really see now how much of an impact that had, on my athletic journey.
COVID did a number on my daughter. She went to Santa Clara for 2 years, but California shut down her freshman year, and then her sophomore year, same thing. Like, she had to stay in the campus was closed down. Did you face that at Stanford? Was it as an athlete? Was it hard on you to navigate the shutdown of a state like California, which was so restrictive?
Yeah, so COVID was actually during my junior year in high school.
Oh, okay.
And
all right.
Yeah. But it definitely was difficult. We were able to get kind of like a mat we had like a barn at our house. We were also able to like get some weights, which at the time were increasing in price dramatically. But it was really just a time of like, this is going to end, at some point, things are going to get clear. And it's like, do you want to make the choice to, continue to, hone in on your craft and get better? Or do you kind of just want to let this time pass by? And that was definitely one of the things I was looking back, most grateful for, that I made the choice to, kind of do the hard thing.
Doug, you can hear in all his answers that is, he's been shaped by sports, like driven and resilient and up to the challenge and figure it out. And let's get a mat out here and we need to get some weights and and it must have a lot to do with your dad, kind of instilling that within you. Did you know it was happening when he was there? Did you appreciate him for who he was, or was there some struggle to try to get along with a dad like that? I mean, I have like I said, I have a 16-year-old son. There are times when he and I are on the same page and times when we're not.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You said
Yeah.
there's a paradox
There's
there,
definitely,
right, Sam? Like there was the dad and then there was the coach, and that sometimes got blurred a little bit, right? But like, how did you ultimately navigate that, especially later on?
yeah, there's definitely been, some valleys and peaks in our journey. Like I definitely wouldn't be here today without my dad and kind of his tutelage. Um, I think growing up, he did a good job of growing up, of kind of trying to expose us to all these different sports, and at the same time, like there was times he was hard on us. Um, so I think at times, like I said, is in terms of your identity, it's tough if your identity gets wrapped up in thinking, your dad loves you because you're winning at whatever you're doing. That kind of can just set you up for,
Sure.
Anxiety and just like fear. But, I really looking back, I think he just did a great job in terms of, exposing us to a lot of different sports. And like from the time I was a kid, my dad was my hero, just like he played soccer at Penn State, and just like, I wanted to go to Penn State, from the time I was like 4 years old. I had my little like Penn State sweatshirt on.
Right.
So I think like, yeah, there's definitely a lot there for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so Stanford tell me about the experience there, and obviously had some peaks and valleys and some adversity you had to fight through, and then the choice to move back home and finish your career at Penn State. Talk about that.
So I got there the first summer, and I was just like had a lot of pain in my lower back that I kind of never had before, and it just got to the point where I almost couldn't practice, and I got out there and I was thinking, I'm gonna coming out here to take over the world, and that just wasn't the case, and I got in contact with Doug that first summer. And it just took a lot of work in terms of trying to, kind of work through a lot of the biomechanical dysfunctions that, had kind of presented themselves in years of being, wrestler and doing various other sports. So it was definitely a really, really challenging time for that first year.
And did you have success there though? In the second year?
So the first year, I made the choice that I redshirted the first year, and I competed in one or two things. There's kind of like the folk style season, which is like the college wrestling style, and then you kind of shift to freestyle. So I competed in a couple of freestyle tournaments, and I did pretty well. But that first summer, I went home, and my younger brother had gotten hip surgery, and it was apparently a genetic, runs in families. So I got checked out. I needed the same hip surgery. So I made the choice to get the surgery in like July of 2023, effectively shutting me down for my second year at Stanford, which I medical redshirted.
And that's how you met Doug.
Right.
Okay.
And a lot of diligence done there. I mean, some great work done. We identified some of those asymmetries, and we were really working on training towards ellipsing some of those deficits, right? And some of them were strength ratio deficits. There was some things going on in the pelvic complex. So I think maybe we set the stage, and then if you have a congenital thing that's happening within the hip, to get the corrective surgery to make sure that that's functioning properly, was an important variable there, right?
So did you meet him with his back issues, or did you meet him later?
Issues,
okay, so you were there with him when he was
right
thinking through this genetic issue.
We were identifying it as like a pelvic, obliquity, and that putting stress on the low back, and we were really working and focusing on, resolving that, and then really using a lot of high instrumentation with our equipment to work on strength ratios and things of that nature.
Has your brother healed too? Is he good?
Yeah. So my brother is he's down at Duke. He's a freshman down there, and he's kind of in the same boat. We both got the surgery, and we're doing a lot better. And we're kind of hopefully moving in a positive trajectory.
Oh man!
Right,
Duke and Stanford.
It's pretty good. I mean, like pretty good trajectory there.
You must have a pretty good mom.
Penn State.
Let's talk about how good your mom is too.
Mom. Yeah, I've got mom too. So.
Yeah. She was awesome. She stayed home with us when we were kids, and we were doing just as my dad was kind of, his domain was sports. My mom's domain was kind of athletics. or not have academics. And we would have a vigorous kind of academic training program in the summer, when we were like 5 and 6, and we'd be doing math boxes and kind of all this stuff to, really give us that academic boost. So,
well, good. It takes two. For sure, it's better to have both parents in the home and working together to figure out how to do the best with our kids, and not always you're not always able to do that, and that's something that we all have to be challenged by. I was blessed to have my parents together, and I've had to fight tooth, claw, and nail to keep my wife around. So. No, but the decision to not go back to Stanford, was that did that affect you? Was that a hard one?
Yeah. So that first spring of my first year, I can remember I had a specific call with my dad, and the coaches at the time just weren't really on board with me getting surgery, and I just knew that I wasn't really going to be able to reach any of my goals if I didn't, get the surgery and kind of get my body right. And at the same time, I was like, it wouldn't be the smartest decision to leave Stanford. I was like, how many kids would kill to be here and have this degree? So kind of then I made that choice that I was going to try to graduate in 2 years and kind of try to get the degree while preserving my eligibility, and then kind of find a new home. So that first summer I took, I think it was like 7 or 8 community college classes online while taking some summer classes at Stanford. And kind of just really accelerated my degree, took as many classes as I could take. And then I was able to kind of graduate at the end of my second year and then take the degree and then kind of move on.
It brings up one, I know you got something. It brings up something that I think is critical to talk about, or at least share with my thoughts with. The value of your dad being your coach and helping you through your athletic journey didn't stop when you graduated from high school. He's continuing to be that person, that sounding board for you to help you navigate some of the tougher decisions you're making as a young man. So many times I think parents feel like their job is done at 18. Mm-hmm. And we have work to do in raising our daughter who's 20 and our daughter who's 24 and my son who's 16. And it's not going to stop just because they've graduated from high school or gone on to college and graduated from college. I mean, I'm going to be their dad for the rest of their lives, and they're always going to have me there to help think through these tough decisions. Right. And it sounds like your dad was there, your mom was there for you as you thought through, what am I going to do here? How am I going to navigate this? And what degree did you get from Stanford?
Yeah, so I finished with a Bachelor of Arts in Human Biology, and my eventual goal is to eventually go to med school. So I was kind of hoping, and my specialty was kind of human performance. But yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. Your mom and dad are huge people in your life, and then also trying to develop kind of a network of people that you can bounce ideas off of. Whether that's been, pastors at my church or just kind of coaches I've had in high school, and just kind of being able to call people who, have been through these decisions and are a lot wiser than me, and kind of, trying to see what the best route is, kind of comprising everyone's thoughts.
Right. Yeah. One of the most impressive things that I recall, amongst many things of working with you and getting to know you, Sam, is I recall when Sam was in this moment of academic overload at Stanford. And I'm saying, wow, like this is not a local community college, which is great education. They do great things. But this is academic overload at Stanford. And I was like, wow, that's got to be tough. And he said to me, and this sticks with me to this day, Doug, a lot of people like to say things are hard, but do they really apply themselves to tackling those things? And I was like, oh, that's a great perspective, right? Like really a lot of people say, oh, this is hard. But are you doing things hard and meeting them head on, like to really tackle them and get through them, right? And I don't know if you recall that, Sam, but I thought that was a really wonderful story. Right.
So wrestling, let's talk about just you training yourself to be a good wrestler. Obviously that's hard, right. But people will say it's hard too. And do you find it hard? I mean, is that something that you've looked at many times and went, God, I have to cut 5 pounds in the next 2 hours. How am I going to do that? Like, talk a little bit about your journey as a wrestler.
You kind of have to come up with a holistic perspective in terms of training. I think as I've kind of grown in my wrestling journey, there's kind of a lot of different aspects that go into being good at wrestling, as you guys were kind of saying. Whether, from a nutritional perspective, from kind of a biomechanical standpoint and making sure, your structural integrity is good. The actual wrestling itself, your conditioning. I think there's all these aspects, which is one of the things that I love about it, because I really love the training aspect. And I think to be, a wrestler kind of, in a martial art, you kind of really have to love the training, just because it is such a big part of your life. I work out really twice a day, pretty much 5 or 6 days a week.
Right.
And it just becomes a lifestyle from, when you go to bed, what you eat. And that's one of the things I love about it.
Right. It's a total commitment. I'm really curious, Sam, like where you are now as a wrestler from a skill set perspective. What are some strategies that you use now to help your skill set evolve? Like, do you want to share any of that stuff? I mean, is it that
secret? It's a secret, Doug.
Secret stuff, or maybe it's someone like a young wrestler who might hear this, like some things that you do to constantly challenge your skill set to get better for where you want to be.
Yeah. So it kind of goes right into my decision to come to Penn State. So Penn State they've won 10 out of the last 12 national championships. They've just really had a storied program over the last decade or so.
Wow.
And kind of growing up in Pennsylvania, it was just like Penn State wrestling, Penn State wrestling, Penn State wrestling, like everyone. It's all anyone could talk about. And I can remember when I was originally going through the recruiting process, like I said, I was never really like, the top guy. And I just kind of never thought that Penn State was something that was going to be able to be possible for me. And after I graduated from Stanford, I thought I have 4 years eligibility left. I have a degree from Stanford. I accomplished, what I wanted from an academic standpoint. And when I was kind of looking at where I was going to go in terms of, my next home, I decided to just show up here. I had kind of gotten connected to the coach, but it wasn't like they were necessarily recruiting me. But I kind of just showed up as soon I flew out. It was like 2 days after graduation at Stanford. And I kind of just showed up here and kind of trained with them the whole summer, because my perspective was that, from in terms of wrestling skills, like, I know I'm athletic. I know like my body is going to get healthy. I know I have all these skill sets, but right. I really just want to surround myself with the best people in the world. Like we have, Olympic bronze medalists, training with us, Olympic champs. So it's like, I think from a terms of just surrounding yourself with people who are, more advanced than you and kind of the best at what they do. And you kind of just learn and grow from them over time, which is why I wanted to come here.
Doug, it sounds a little bit like our buddy from USC,
right?
Who played. I mean, he switched sports, right?
Right, that's right.
But he self-advocated. He went to USC and wanted to play football for USC since he was a little kid.
Yeah, right.
Johnny.
That's right. Yeah. He played lacrosse 4 years D1.
Right.
And then he had a COVID year eligibility, and he goes to USC and he makes it as a D-back. So, amazing. But
that's crazy, dude.
Right. But, seem like what I hear, and I think it's another important facet is, all right, you're from Pennsylvania. Your dad played at Penn State, but they're really your only connections to the program. You just show up and walk in.
Yeah.
It's like,
here I am.
Like getting out of your comfort zone, like extending yourself. I mean, you could have very well said, I'm going to go to Lafayette or I'm going to wrestle here or somewhere else. But you wanted that experience and you extended yourself, got out of your comfort zone, and now you're owning that. And I think that's amazing. That's a really good story as well.
Did graduating from Stanford give you a sense of confidence to walk in any door? Like I would think.
I would say a lot of confidence just comes in my relationship with Jesus Christ. I would just say that he's kind of given me supernatural confidence and just that like he has a plan for my life. And
sure.
A lot of people were like, dude, like you're never going to wrestle at Penn State. Like, what are you doing? And I was kind of like, I kind of just like had I just kind of knew that this was the plan for me. And like
I'm
you
on a
said, it's kind
mission
of like,
from God.
yeah. I just showed up, and I was like, I didn't really, know if anything was going to work out. But at the end of the day, I kind of just had to trust in that plan. Um, that I felt I was being called to.
Yeah,
Amazing.
that's
I love
cool.
it.
So what does wrestling hold for you now? What's the plan for the next? What you have 4 years of eligibility?
Yeah, so I have 3 years after this. This was
Okay.
I finished 17-5 this year. And more than that, I was just super grateful to, get back and be fully healthy. And kind of
Sure.
just be able to be around all these great guys. And this was kind of the best I've ever wrestled my entire life. But I'm really not done here. Like I know that I'm gonna eventually reach my goal. And this is the best place I could be to do that. And I'm just super grateful to continue to work and continue to push to reach my goals.
I always say God has me right where He wants me.
Right. Right.
That's really neat, Sam. The idea that wrestling might end someday. What you said you're thinking about being a doctor. Is physical therapy kind of the direction you're headed? Do you like this? Taking your athletic background and applying it to helping other athletes with their physical maladies and helping them improve
I think
themselves?
kind of just my relationship with Doug has really kind of inspired where I see myself going from a career standpoint. I just think there's a lot of, originally I was thinking about going to orthopedic surgery, and the more I thought about it, while I do understand that there are, certain conditions that require surgery, I'm really thinking towards more non-surgical orthopedic, like sports medicine, from a standpoint of kind of just trying to incorporate, physical therapy, kind of a lot of the technology that, Doug's been using in terms of structural integrity of the body, and kind of trying to use, all these different disciplines from medicine and kind of the best from each field to kind of be able to, give athletes the best chance to reach their goals.
That's awesome. A great choice. Really good choice.
Well, we're coming kind of to the end here. Do you have anything else? I was going to ask you what one lesson would you share from your journey with our listeners? What kind of takeaway do you want people to think about it? And you shared your faith, which I think is a beautiful testimony, and I'm sure there's more to that. You haven't really talked about your mental health at all, but you have talked about some anxiety you carried and some thoughts and decisions you've had to make that were challenging and made you a stronger person. What would you like our listeners to kind of know about Sam Beckett?
Yeah, I would just say it's a journey. It's a journey. Just thinking over the course of my life, I really just think you have to have, a faith in a higher power to be able to, stay steady through it all. There's a lot of people that I grew up with who have kind of just like fallen off at one point or another. And just like, even now, being in college, there's so many people that I grew up playing sports with, or kind of all this stuff, people who were more talented or more special than me. And they just, they haven't reached, where I'm at now. And I haven't reached my ultimate goal yet. But I think just being centered, on why you're doing what you're doing, before you start, because it's going to be hard. There's times I've, thought about quitting. I've been through surgeries, injuries, like all that's just par for the course. It's going to come. And I think if you don't have that, that faith, to get you through those times, you're just not going to reach your goal. But I would say that's probably my biggest takeaway from my journey.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. I love it.
Not a lot of the episodes so far have I wanted my son to listen to, but Sam, you're someone I hope that I can get my 16-year-old just to sit long enough to listen to you, because I think you exemplify the kind of young man that every dad would want their kid to be like. Right. And so hats off to your parents.
Yeah, Sam, it's been a great conversation here, and I really appreciate you sharing the journey. It's been amazing.
Yeah. Well, if you've enjoyed the episode, be sure to... Yeah, dude. Yeah. We'll stay in touch, and we'll watch you. We'll follow your career for sure. If you've enjoyed the episode, and be sure to subscribe and share it with your friends. if you love wrestling, it's an incredible sport that more kids should do.
Right.
The Shareways Foundation is kind of the producer of the show, and we funded last week a young girl who wanted to be a high school wrestler. We were able to award her a grant so she could pay for her equipment so she could be on her high school wrestling team. So,
that's great. Wow.
And we have another episode with a wrestler, Nyla Valencia.
That's right.
Who you had. We should probably check in with her and see how she's doing.
She's doing great.
We want to get her brother on, right?
Yeah, her brother is similar, cut from the same cloth as Sam. So he'd be a wonderful interview for sure.
Well, follow Movement is the Medicine for more inspiring stories and conversations about mental toughness and resilience and how to move your body correctly. This is, a final thought is we just really, I just love that we do a good job of getting the real from these athletes. It's just so neat.
Yeah. I mean, that story was sitting within him.
Yeah.
And doesn't really share it like this with a lot of people every day. So I think, the inspiration there, maybe it can impart to people is special.
Well, that's an episode today. Like we always say, dance like no one's watching.